Hi, welcome back to the farm. My name's Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. We're getting quite a bit of rain just at this minute, so it might be a little bit heavy on the roof. You might hear it maybe through the background. It's been wet most of the day today, which is quite nice, and a little bit cold, hence the beanie, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The main farm news this week, got a couple of things actually. The first is I talked about the chickens last week and having to train them to get inside and go on the perch. Finally, after 2 weeks and 2 days, they figured it out and they are now even properly roosting on our roosting racks that we have with the rest of the chooks. So that has been quite good. Finally, not have to worry about them at night. The other thing is that because rain was forecasted for most of this week, before the rain came, Adam decided to pump quite a bit of the water from the tanks here at the shed down to our dam to try and fill the dam up as much as possible, and then use the roof here on the shed to refill the tanks. So we emptied one tank completely and one down to about like 2/3 or something, and then equalize those out. So now we have about a tank-ish over two tanks rather than having two full tanks. And with this rain that we're getting in these last few days, we should be back to getting those filled up again, which is quite good. Again, the dam is still very, very low. So we need quite a lot of rain over this late winter and into spring period to be able to get that back to being a proper dam before we get into summer. So that is why we've been pumping water into it. And now that we have dug out the bottom and we are now getting that a coverage over all of it to seal it, and we can now start to really build up and hopefully end up with a much deeper and better dam moving forward. I have just been outside giving the sheep their regular grain that I've been giving them lately. So my hair is really straggly and horrible because it was raining at the same time, which is one of the reasons why I wore a beanie to cover up my hair. But also because it is quite cool. For those who have been watching for the past few weeks, you will know that I have been working on my Christmas colorway for 2026. And if you're on my newsletter, you would have seen that earlier this week, I put the pre-orders up live on the site. So it is now available for pre-order. To get updates like that, the best place is my newsletter, and then I announce it here on YouTube and on Instagram. So yeah, it is now live. Thank you to those that have already put in their orders. I really appreciate your support and for getting in nice and early. Unfortunately, I will not be able to ship to the US based on the current situation with tariffs and with the a decision by Australia Post to suspend all parcels until that is figured out in terms of what taxes and tariffs are being paid at which end. So, yeah, unfortunately, that's just how it goes at the moment. So let me share the colorway with you here again in case you haven't seen it. I'm calling it Tinsel on the Tree. And here it is in the ball with my hair on it. So it is a tonal green. I've got about 4 or 5 different colors of green through this, and then I've got some orange and purple and blue, and it is only a short section. It's about this much of the whole skein is the color, and that means that it is a mostly green skein with a little bit of a flash of color in it. So when you knit it up, if you are going to go flat, obviously depending on your gauge where your colors will fall, but you get something like this. And for in the round socks, something like this. And for assigned pulling, there are plenty of patterns for how to create assigned pulling, and you can get something like this. So I have pre-orders up now for both the sock yarn and DK yarn. Both are on the sparkle base. That is all I'm going to offer this year. I just think it's terribly appropriate given that it's for tinsel on the tree. The pre-order will close on the 14th of October, with last orders being shipped the first week of November. Now, how I run my pre-orders is probably a little bit different to most hand dyers. What I like to do is it's more like a dyed to order pre-order than a traditional pre-order. I'm not going to wait until that date closure before I start to dye batches of yarn. What I will do is as I get enough to dye a batch, I will dye that up and I will ship out what I can at that point. So it will be progressively being filled as you go, with the latest that you can order as that closure date. And then the latest that I'll be shipping is that November period. So if you order early, you will get your yarn earlier and you will be able to cast on and start gift knitting or some kind of Christmas knitting for yourself well in advance of Christmas. So I hope that makes sense and that everyone is happy with that. And if you've got any questions, please reach out to me and ask. I'm really excited about this colorway and about being able to have done some assigned pulling. I will have it as a sample to show at the next market that I'm doing, which is the 14th of September. Strangely, I've got at least like the 14th in my brain, which is maybe I should check. Hang on. I will have a sample of the Christmas colorway at the next market that I'm doing, which is the 14th of September. I'm getting confused. I've got 14th of September for the next market, 14th of October for the closure for the pre-order. 14th of September will be my next market, which is in Romsey, which is the All About Fibre and Yarn market. So I will have a skein there to show anyone who's interested in seeing it in person. And I will also have a QR code for direct access to the pre-order page. So we can talk about it while you're there and you can just click and directly order. My plan is to have some additional skeins of tinsel on the tree dyed up, and I will have that at the Christmas All About Fibre and Yarn market in December, as well as a little bit of the colours from the past few years that I've had. And that's the only time that I ever offer those, and I don't put them up on the website. They will literally just come out for markets if I've still got any left. I haven't dyed any extra, but I had a little bit left over. I'm also thinking about something else Christmassy. Hopefully it will work, and I'll have that at that market in December as well. But we'll see how we go in terms of my my artistic abilities to see if I can get that to work. So I've got the first batch of my DK sparkle yarn soaking right now to start working on the first batch of those orders. And I should be able to get some sock yarn done as well over the next few days. So it's exciting to be able to start rolling that out quite quickly. First to what I am wearing this week, as I've already alluded to, it is cold and it is wet, and I decided that my hair needed a beanie today. It hasn't been washed in a few days, and then also we've had like spitting rain quite a bit, so it ends up being frizzy and then flat, and so a beanie was absolutely the best way to go. And now the sun's coming out. Got it all happening. It was literally pouring like only a few seconds ago. This is the Graham beanie, and I knit it holding two skeins of yarn together and then switching and dropping one strand of one and knitting double with just the one color. So it is, the pink here is called Shock Me, and it is by Melbourne City Dye Works. And the mohair in here is Wagtail yarns in the Vartil Orchid colorway. Really pretty combination, and this is a really soft and snuggly hat. I've been really slow going on my knitting progress this week. It's been, I don't know, I've been a bit busy at work, so I've just come home reasonably tired and haven't done a lot of stuff except sort of stare into space, to be completely honest. I did finish the first sleeve of my Melanie jumper. This is knit using Liaisome yarns in the basalt colorway in it's a Pole Merino blend. Oh, no, Pole Merino sheep. And then a Tencel Merino from Fiberific in, I don't even know what color it is, but it's the triangulum base. Someone asked me about that last week. So I'm holding those together, which is producing this really beautiful color and really beautiful fabric. So I have knit the entire sleeve, and I've actually got way more left of the yarn than I thought I was going to have. And I've also done all of the fold over part in the actual yarn instead of the Bendigo that I used on the collar. I think I'll keep the Bendigo on the collar. I think it gives it a bit more structure. Because it is actually a denser knit than just the Liaisome and the Fiberific together. But I am going to rip out the bottom hem and continue to knit in this yarn. Let me see if I can show you. So after finishing the sleeve, I had this much left of the half. Way more than I thought I would have. So I'm going to end up with actual scraps left over, like plenty. I seem to panic when I don't need to, and when I just go, oh yeah, I'll be fine, I end up running out of yarn. So I've been too careful, and I've got way too much left over. It's okay. I think I'd rather have way more left over than not have enough. So I have, as I said, I've done the whole first sleeve, and it took me a while. And someone did point out to me that knitting 2 sleeves is equivalent to about 2/3 of knitting a body. So it is quite a lot, and you're shifting stitches a lot more because you're working on a short circumference. Also, I've been keeping track of the rows because I need to make sure that the second sleeve is the same. Whereas when I'm knitting the body, that's a one-time deal, so you don't really have to count rows unless you're having to work in decreases or anything, and there were no decreases in this. So I was able to just keep going until it was the length that I wanted. This I had to actually focus on and make sure that I was taking notes so that I could get both the same. Hopefully I've done that and didn't lose track at some point, but I'll just measure, and like close enough will be good enough. And because you then fold this up, I can make sure that the fold works out so that the sleeves end up being the same length anyway. So I have picked up and started the second sleeve. I've done 2 lots of the decreases, I think, and so it's going to be reasonably mindless to now be able to just copy what I did on the first one to get that done. And then I'll pull this back, knit some more on the body to do the fold over, and probably I may even block it before I finish the body just to get the length right. I know I'm going to have to block the sleeves a little wider at the top, only because I tried it on and it's kind of gathering a little bit strangely under the arm, but that'll definitely block out. And then once I've done that, I'll have an idea of what I want to do for the body length. The sleeve length, I think, is going to be long enough. I did knit a little bit extra than I probably needed, just so that I can give myself a little bit more width through the arm, and then just because it's folding over, I can do that after it's already been blocked. And for the cuff of the arm, is that what it's called? Yeah, the cuff of the arm. You only tack down this end in a couple of places. So if I block it nice and flat and then just sew it down in a couple of places once it's blocked, I think that will make it neater as well, and I won't have to worry about picking it up all the way along. Then I'm wondering if I even do that with the bottom hem. It does say to bind off and then to sew it down all the way around. But it might be easier to just tack it in a few places, or at least start that way and then go back and sew it all, because I feel like when you go around, you end up getting yourself off by a couple of rows if you're not careful. So yeah, look, it goes perfectly with this. I did also do a little bit of work on my winter song jumper, which is in the Sky Sail yarn by Pirate Pearl, which is a merino linen blend, and it's in the My Lover's Eyes color. And I have almost finished the hem lace detail. Now, I've been really enjoying this lace. It's been great and it's super easy, but I'm thinking, and I think I mentioned this last week, I'm really terrible at reading patterns in advance. I just mark off like my size all the way through, and then I just basically start at the start and just go. And for my brain, I don't know, I feel like it doesn't really compute in my head until I'm doing the steps, and then it's like, oh yeah, I get that. But if I read it in advance, I get a little bit confused, and I think, well, that doesn't sound, I don't understand what that means. But if I just do it as I'm actually knitting, totally fine. So I have almost finished doing this, and then I was just reading just slightly ahead to see what was coming up, and it said now that you have to decrease after doing the bottom hem. And that kind of feels weird to me, because when you normally with like the bottom hem of a jumper, you end up knitting it on smaller needles and doing ribbing to pull it in. Whereas this is going to be bigger, and then you decrease, and then the body's actually smaller than the hem, which I don't know, it doesn't sound right to me, but all of the sizes has that, and it gets decreased by quite a lot. And then you just knit straight for the rest of the body. So I had initially cast on the third size, and it looked huge, like really massive on my hips. And my hips are a lot broader than my true waist, and then I'm sort of fairly straight up into the shoulders. So it was sort of like, and then out like this, like it was way, way bigger. And I thought that was going to look quite, like, it was just going to look ridiculous. It was going to be way too big. Like, I want some positive ease, but not that much positive ease. But now, having read the instructions, if I've cast on now, I cast on the smallest size, which reduced the repeats by like 3 or 4, I think, to cut out quite a lot of the stitches. And now that it wants you to now decrease more, like a lot more, then I think it's going to end up being too tight. So I'm trying to figure out in my head if I can now decrease less and go down to a to one of the numbers of the next 2 sizes up, so that I can then have the right number for the lace panel at the top, or whether I don't decrease at all and continue just knitting up and then do some decreases once I get up to here, to then get the right number of stitches for the lace panels, or if I need to have more stitches so that I can then have different space for my arms, because I always find that I need to have quite a bit of extra, like my from here to here on me is quite long, and then my body is probably a bit shorter. So I'm a little bit torn now about what to do, and so I'm just sort of sitting on it and thinking about it. I'm going to probably just plow through and do the sleeve on the Melanie, and then decide what I'm going to do with this. But I actually think what I might end up doing is ripping back, and instead of So I actually think that this size will be fine for my body and it would give me plenty of ease. But it's if the intent of the pattern is to have decreases after this hem, then I need to probably cast on enough to be able to then do some decreases back to this amount of stitches rather than decrease anywhere further down from what I have right now. Does that make sense? So yeah, as I said, the actual knitting itself and the pattern is very clear. The problem is the fit that it is directing me to get. And I think just by changing the cast on number or by changing the amount of decreases after this, I will be able to get a number that I like. So here, that's where I don't think I showed you the second repeat of the lace. So there it is there. So it's really pretty. And I mean, maybe the thought is that this pulls in quite a bit, but I feel like mine's actually pretty loose. And it's got twisted rib in between with these sections of twisted stitches or cables. But it's not pulling in as much as I as it should, given the amount of decreases that you're supposed to do after this. So yeah, that's my dilemma at the moment. And that's all I'm working on. I've been still thinking about a few extra things to cast on, but I really do want to try and finish that jumper. And I just stalled on that first sleeve, but I think now I should make some good progress in these next few days. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.